Hello everybody, my name is David J. Ortiz-Leon. I'm a student success specialist at Phoenix College, and if you're watching this video, then welcome. This is episode 1 of a collaboration with the PTK RoPi chapter at Phoenix College, as well as the college staff itself. This project hopes to put a spotlight under issues that we feel not only as students or as educators, but also as just members of the Phoenix area and the Phoenix community could use a bit of a spotlight on. To kickstart this project, we're starting with a topic that's going to hit real close to home. We want to talk about the impact of COVID-19 on our student population. Students at the end of the day are just people. And I mean this in no way, but the same issues like housing, like finances, or even mental health still factor into a student's performance at the end of the day. So what is the experience like when you have to put all those feelings aside to enter that Zoom, that Google, or that WebEx meeting? We're going to get into that right now. A big thank you to George Childs, Pocahontas Daniels, and Britney Spears for talking with me today. They volunteered to do this, and they're some of the best student leaders I know on campus and some great friends of mine who work in the PTK RoPi chapter. We wouldn't be able to do this without them, so I want to give them a big shout out. And without further ado, let's roll into the first episode. Thank you. It is crazy to believe, but we're officially about a year in now. I don't know if that's really like click with any of you guys. I think we started talking about it at a previous meeting, but a year. I have not seen any of you, and it's bizarre. It's like barely kind of sinking in for me. I don't know. How are you feeling about that, George?
I miss everyone. Part of the things about this pandemic for this last year is basically for me, it's been 3 semesters of looking at a computer screen, which, I appreciate the education, but I miss the connection.
Mm-hmm. And Pocahontas?
I feel like, well, for me, because I live alone, except for with my cat, and I feel like it's just so hard to get that like human connection to be able to talk to people. Like I love spending time with people, but it feels so isolating. Just everything's through a computer.
Mm-hmm. And Brittany?
I actually have that connection. I'm not home alone, but I have too much of that connection because these people, we spend our lives busy. Like my kids are at school, my husband's working, and with the pandemic, it was kind of like came down hard on us, and we're all together. So I'm feeling what a lot of families are feeling right now, where it's just like you're in my space, I need space, or just I'm feeling cluttered.
Yeah.
And that's even with school, because like George was saying, that you're staring at a screen, the same thing your doctor tells you never to do, stare at a screen for a certain amount of time. They tell your kids don't 30 minutes here. I feel like there should be a max. But there's days when I'm on the computer in a class for over 4 hours. Oof. And it's ridiculous. Mm-hmm. And I'm just like, I don't understand. I don't know if you're gonna see me hit this desk today, but it's a possibility. But yeah, the pandemic has definitely been a causation and a correlation, put it that way.
No, I absolutely feel that. It's funny when I kind of hop off meetings sometimes, or just back-to-back classes, whatever it is. I feel like my head is kind of like sunken in static, mm-hmm. like TV static. I don't know. There's something mentally draining about it. I know it's something that I think a lot of people in the sort of like data input sector, people who work office jobs, are definitely very familiar with, but it's strange when you have to add that to still trying to like take time to do your homework, to work a job, to be with your family, whatever the case may be. And maybe that's something, the way it's stacked up, it was kind of already adding up prior to this, right? I don't know, and that's what I kind of want to explore right now with some of you guys. If prior to this pandemic happening, were you guys already kind of like having a little bit of like some hurdles going about school? Like, did you have other prior engagements that kept you busy, whether it's family, work, like maybe you're a team lead? So like, right out the gate before we hit the pandemic, was it a little bit tricky?
For me, it kind of all just worked so well because I had my job working with special needs children, and then I was so great because whenever I had homework, we would all sit at the table and the kids would do their homework and I'd do my homework. It all was like so in motion and altogether perfect. It was the pandemic that really just changed that whole aspect for me.
And George?
Yeah, for me, I had a lot of stuff going on right before spring break, and a full schedule. I had connection, I had classes, I had work, I had a lot of group activities, and even us in Phi Theta Kappa, we went to the escape room. I think that was like the day before they like literally shut everything down.
Yeah.
And so yeah, it was sort of a struggle for me to all of a sudden go from being this social outdoors kind of person to all of a sudden now we're all shut inside of our house and we have to isolate, and it's like, don't go near your friends, don't go near your family, don't go near anybody. And it's like you're sitting here like, okay, hopefully this is going to be over next month. And then 1 month turned into 5, then 5 turned into 10, and now here we are at almost a year. What I'm nervous about is when everything starts to open back up, how I'm going to deal with reacclimating to being around people now, because I've been talking to people through computer screens for so long that how do we regain that connection with people after seeing them in squares for a year,
And Brittany?
I'm gonna answer no to that question. My 3 months before the pandemic hit, before spring break hit, I had a couple of incidents with my family. But once again, the world was open, so those were incidents I could talk about and deal with in person, and that helped out. And then the world shuts down, you shut down, you get blocked out, and you try to figure out what to do or how to do it through a computer screen or through your phone. And it's not easy because there's a million other people doing the same exact thing, and you don't know where to go. You've never been in that life before. You don't know how to reach out to a teacher or how to reach out to a doctor and just see them on a screen when all you've known is to see them in person. I really felt like a baby boomer. Like things just changed. Like it was there one day and then next day it's gone. I'm like, what do you mean I have to do this? Or how am I supposed to handle this? Like, I don't understand. And nobody, when the whole world's confused, nobody has the answer. And that was the worst feeling ever. It's like, you can have an answer or you can't. And most people didn't have the answer. They didn't know what was going to happen next. They didn't know there were going to be 2 extensions to this lockdown, or that Black Lives Matter would happen in the middle of that lockdown, or different things. Like, it was occurring after occurring after occurring. And I was literally like, I don't even know how to breathe anymore. Like, it toll.
And it's really interesting that you said that, because I think you're absolutely right. It's not just the issues we experience, because I imagine much like Brittany, George, Polka Dot, maybe you've had life happen at the same time the pandemic has been going on. I know I've definitely experienced it myself. I've had deaths in the family. I've had some housing readjustments that I've had to take care of. And like Brittany said, the way I have to handle the situations are completely different. It's not, I'm just going to go over there and fix it. Well, suddenly you kind of have to play phone tag or zip through different email threads just to try to get someone to listen. There was a like kind of nerve-wracking, it was like being in an echo chamber sometimes.
Playing a game of telephone and it winds up turning into something different at the end.
Yeah. And thank you so much for pointing that out. I've never found the way to properly articulate it. And that makes me feel a little bit better now. I kind of wasn't alone in that, because it was stressful. And then, but dovetailing off of that, in the same way, Brittany was saying she had those kind of like life just happened kind of events going through it. Would George or Pocahontas, were there any events like that happened? You don't have to go into too much detail. I want to be respectful, but was there still
during COVID or like before COVID?
Like during COVID.
I think the worst thing that happened to me was I had a roommate, and just the isolation and us being forced to like hang out with each other 24/7, it caused some problems. And then we weren't able to resolve them, and then we weren't able to immediately move away from each other because where are you going to go right now? So that was a very awkward for like a couple months. We had to live with each other when we had basically broken up our friendship.
Oh.
So it was rough.
Okay.
Yeah, I think for me, the two things that were really traumatic during this pandemic, you know, my cousin got killed in September, and then I had another good friend get killed in October. And so one of the hardest things about this pandemic was that you couldn't really go to funerals. You know, traveling was very hard, and for funerals we had a limited amount of people that can come into the chapels and things like that. So for me, I had to watch, you know, my cousin's funeral via the internet, you know, and those are those hard things that you want when you're going through something like that. You want to be able to grieve with your family. But we weren't able to do that, you know, because it was safer not to travel, because we had older people in our family who their health could be at risk if, you know, people are traveling in from out of town. And so that created a state of mind where I knew that I had to actually reach out to other people, because for me as a Black man, sometimes it's like we're supposed to like hold this I'm strong, but I was cracking, I was falling apart, and I knew that if I didn't reach out to other people and tell people I'm not okay right now, then I don't even know if I would have made it up to this semester. I definitely know I wouldn't have made it through the fall semester. But I reached out for help, and as I reached out for help one time, it got easier to do it the second time. It got easier to do it again, and so I'm grateful. The one thing I think I learned through this pandemic is that it's okay to not be okay.
No worries. And yeah, it's I know personally I have definitely felt some, you know, development just like in the way my general attitude towards people. I feel like I kind of regained a bit of my humanity. That sounds so like strange, but when I feel like with how hyper focused school and work can be, we're just so like, this is our thing and this is all we do. And so kind of being put in a spot like that, it allowed for me to kind of connect with some actual like compassion. Which kind of like, George, like you were saying, like that kind of like machismo culture, like as a male, we often put for granted. And it's just one of those little things. But in terms of those other kind of factors at play, would you guys say there was anything extremely underrated that you didn't think was going to be a huge issue during the pandemic? And I don't toilet paper.
Toilet paper. I'm not gonna lie, freaking toilet paper.
Toilet paper, you just hit the button. It was. I was thinking about that again today. I remember there was an Australian newspaper that like kept a blank page that you were able to cut out into sheets because it was that bad over there. Yeah, it is. George, Pocahontas. Was there anything else like that? I know for me, like, I generally have to walk everywhere or take public transit, so suddenly I didn't feel comfortable taking the bus or like Ubering, so I'm like, okay, I really can't go anywhere.
Yeah, I agree with you on that one, David. So what I ended up doing, I ended up ordering a bike from Amazon during this pandemic because I was like, I'm not going to get on a bus. Because they're telling us it's not safe. Then I was like, okay, if they're only letting 5 people on the bus, what if there's already 5 people on the bus when it comes past my bus stop? So I'm like, let me buy a bike. And so that became my main mode of transportation. It was either walking or riding my bike. And it was interesting. So that was one of those things that I didn't expect, because you never think that if you don't have a car and there's a pandemic, what do you do? So now this like helped me to be able to create a real plan. If something like this was to happen again or something similar, now I have a plan, you know? So I think for most of us, we now have come up with a plan when things go a little bit awry, you know?
And Pocahontas?
I don't know if there's like one particular thing that got taken away that was the most impactful. I feel like the whole thing was just kind of like, wow, how do I respond to this? for like a good solid like 5 months. It's like
Mhm.
cool.
You know, because we had those days when I remember we would call each other and be like, hey, do you guys know where extra toilet paper is? Or hey, do you know where
Yes.
extra noodles
Oh,
are?
yeah.
Do you know where
Yes.
this is? Do you know where that is? And luckily at the time I got lucky and picked up a cart, like a job at like Instacart and Ship. So I was delivering for groceries. I know exactly where they were, but it was hard for me at the beginning because I would drive around with 3 kids by myself, barely any income, trying to find food. And you have to remember, the St. Mary's Food Bank, all the other places were shut down. The places that you needed the most during that time weren't there.
Mhm.
So, I mean, that would go back to the second and the first question as well. Like, this hit hard. There were changes and people didn't know how to adapt to that. We didn't know how to survive. You have to understand there's people literally down the street that are homeless, living underneath the bridge by the stadium, places you never thought they would be. And it's that hard. And it's crazy because you're thinking, am I next? Is this going to happen to me? And it could be losing your home. It could be your sanity, because that's the main thing during this whole, because once you lose that, you lose everything else. And then I think my biggest thing that was really lost right before COVID, during COVID, and after was communication. Communication with, on my part, because I literally wanted to shut the world down because I cried out for help so many times. Nobody wanted to answer me or could give me the answer I needed. So I figured I'd just do this on my own. I don't want anybody to be there. I don't want any more wrong answers. I don't want to keep fighting if nobody's there to fight with me. So I did it on my own, and I shut out the world. As you guys know, I disappeared for a minute and I came back, and it took a minute because I was like, okay, I know maybe I'm just not asking the right people. Because once again, you don't know which way to go, so you're just not asking the right people. And yeah, it hit the hardest. I also lost the Navy. As you guys know, I was supposed to join the Navy. I lost that, and that's one of my top dreams, is to be in the military. And it, like you said, there's a lot of losses: physical, mental, emotional, logical. It is a drain. Once again, it was just a drain.
And the crazy thing about this is all, like, we're speaking as students, but we haven't even hit the academic part of it. This is what we're all going into class with. Like, we have to, I know when we're getting on with our instructors, we generally try to keep a cool head. It's just a kind of a social thing. I think I find a lot of students to do, be like, okay, we're just going to be a student. We're going to be normal. But it's really hard to kind of cover that up and to just perform well once we're going in with just this immense like stress, or whatever the state of our mental health may be at the time.